January 25th, 1573, the plains north of Hamamatsu Castle. A 29-year-old Tokugawa Ieyasu, against the advice of every single one of his generals, marches 11,000 men straight into the jaws of Takeda Shingen's 30,000. By nightfall, Ieyasu's army is annihilated. He escapes with 5 men. 5. It's the most humiliating defeat of his life. And yet, this broken young lord will go on to unify Japan, found a dynasty that lasts 265 years, and become one of the most consequential rulers in human history. In Nioh 3, you don't just hear about this battle, you fight in it, as Ieyasu's own grandchild, sent back through time to fix a broken future. But how much of what Team Ninja built is real, and what did they invent? Let's find out. Before we dive into Nioh 3, we need to set the stage, because the Sengoku period isn't just a game setting, it's one of the most chaotic and transformative eras in Japanese history. The word Sengoku literally means warring states, Sengoku Jidai. And if you know your Chinese history, that name is borrowed directly from China's own warring states period, the Zhangguo Shidai. Same characters, same chaos. It starts with the Onin War in 1467, a succession dispute in Kyoto that spirals into a decade of urban warfare. By the time the fighting stops, central authority in Japan has completely collapsed. The shogun is a figurehead. The old feudal order is shattered. And across the country, hundreds of regional warlords, the daimyo, are carving out their own domains through war, alliance, and betrayal. This is the world where 3 men emerge as Japan's great unifiers. First, Oda Nobunaga, the revolutionary who crushed the old order with gunpowder and ruthless ambition. If you've played Nioh 2, you know him well. Second, Toyotomi Hideyoshi, the peasant who rose to become the most powerful man in Japan. In Nioh 2, that's Takechiyo, the merchant who teams up with your character to take his name. And third, Tokugawa Ieyasu, the patient one, the one who outlived everyone else and took the throne. The entire Nioh series is built on this arc. Nioh 2 covers the Nobunaga and Hideyoshi era. Nioh 1 climaxes at the Battle of Sekigahara in 1600, where Ieyasu wins it all. And Nioh 3 shows what happens next. The fragile peace, the succession crisis, and the echoes of war that refuse to die. But to understand Nioh 3's story, we need to go back to the battle that nearly ended the Tokugawa line before it even began. Nioh 3 opens in 1622, Edo Castle. Tokugawa Takechiyo, that's you, is about to be appointed the 3rd shogun, but your younger brother Kunimatsu has other plans. Consumed by hatred and empowered by a dark force, he leads a horde of yokai against the castle, kills your mentors Saito Fuku, Yagyu Munenori, Hattori Hanzo, and nearly kills you. You're saved by the guardian spirit Kusanagi, which throws you back in time to the Sengoku era. By the end of the game, you return, save the people Kunimatsu killed, defeat the darkness, and take the name Iemitsu, becoming the 3rd shogun. Now, here's what's remarkable. The core of this story, the sibling rivalry, is historically real. Tokugawa Iemitsu was a real person, born 1604. His childhood name really was Takechiyo, the same name his grandfather Ieyasu used as a child. That's not a coincidence. It was an honor, a signal, that Ieyasu saw this grandchild as his heir. And his rival, his younger brother Tokugawa Tadanaga, childhood name Kunimatsu, just like in the game. But here's the part the game doesn't tell you. Their parents actually favored Kunimatsu. Takechiyo was reportedly sickly, had a stutter, and wasn't considered particularly impressive. Kunimatsu, on the other hand, was the golden child. Their father, Hidetada, and mother, Oe no Kata, openly preferred him for the succession. The person who saved Takechiyo's future, his wet nurse Kasuga no Tsubone. In the game, she appears as Saito Fuku, your Onmyo magic mentor. In real life, she went over Hidetada's head, travelled to Ieyasu's retirement residence in Sumpu, and made the case directly to the old shogun. Ieyasu sided with Takechiyo. And the real ending of this rivalry. After Iemitsu gained full power in 1632, he forced Tadanaga to commit seppuku the following year. No yokai, no guardian spirits. Just cold political reality. The game takes a real succession crisis and turns it into a supernatural epic. The names, the relationships, the stakes, all grounded in history. The yokai are the fiction. The family drama is the truth. When Kusanagi sends Takechiyo back to 1572, you land right in the middle of the Takeda-Tokugawa conflict. And the Sengoku chapter's arc villain is none other than Takeda Shingen, the Tiger of Kai. Now, if you played earlier Nioh games, Shingen was barely there. Just a slightly tougher revenant in side missions. In Nioh 3, he's finally the main event. He leads the Takeda Crimson Army, commands generals like Yamagata Masakage and Baba Nobuharu, and you have to fight through Futamata Castle and Mikatagahara before confronting him at Saigageke. The real Takeda Shingen was born in 1521 in Kai Province, modern Yamanashi Prefecture. And on paper, he had no business being one of the most feared warlords in Japan. Kai was poor, landlocked, mountainous, with little farmland and no access to the sea. But Shingen turned these disadvantages into strengths, building an elite cavalry force and expanding aggressively through strategy and diplomacy. He was called the Tiger of Kai, Kai no Tura. His rivalry with Uesugi Kenshin, the Dragon of Echigo, produced 5 legendary battles at Kawanakajima. But for the Nioh 3 story, it's his campaign against Tokugawa Ieyasu that matters, and Shingen didn't ride alone. His inner circle, the Takeda Four Heavenly Kings, were legends in their own right. In Nioh 3, you fight 2 of them as full bosses before you ever reach Shingen himself. The first is Yamagata Masakage, leader of the infamous Crimson Army, the Takeda's elite cavalry unit. He's the very first boss you encounter when you arrive in 1572. In real history, Masakage was one of Shingen's most trusted generals, commanding the vanguard that swept through Totomi province and overwhelmed the Tokugawa line at Mikatagahara. He and every other member of the Takeda Four Heavenly Kings would die 2 years later at the Battle of Nagashino, the battle that destroyed the Takeda cavalry forever. The second is Baba Nobuharu, and his story has an incredible parallel to someone we'll talk about later. Baba was called the immortal demon of Mino, Oni Mino. Why? Because he fought in over 70 battles across 40 years of service and was never once wounded. Sound familiar? That's the exact same legend as Honda Tadakatsu Ieyasu's greatest general, but on the opposite side. Nioh 3 pits these 2 invincible warriors against each other through you. In the game, Baba appears as a corrupted yokai boss at Futamata Castle, using illusion projections of himself to bait your dodges. In real history, he was Shingen's most trusted advisor. The Koyo Gunkan records that Shingen consulted Nobuharu on all important matters. And here's the detail that ties him directly to the battle we're about to cover after Mikatagahara. It was Baba Nobuharu who led the Takeda vanguard toward Hamamatsu Castle. He saw the open gates, the lit fires, the drumbeat, and he was the one who recognized it as a potential trap and chose not to attack. He's the man who fell for the most famous bluff in Sengoku history. His end was just as legendary. At Nagashino in 1575, he begged Shingen's son Katsuyori not to fight, knowing they'd lose against Nobunaga's massed gunfire. Katsuyori ignored him. When the Takeda line broke, Baba stayed behind as rear guard, buying Katsuyori time to escape. Then he turned his horse around, rode back into the Oda army alone, and died fighting. The immortal demon's streak ended, but only because he chose to end it himself. The third is Naito Masatoyo, and you'll hear his name again when we get to the battle itself, because he's the man whose cavalry broke Honda Tadakatsu's flank at Mikatagahara. In the game, he appears as a boss in the Futamata Road. In real history, Masatoyo was one of Shingen's most experienced field commanders. He was responsible for some of the Takeda's most aggressive cavalry charges, the kind that could shatter an enemy line in minutes. At Nagashino in 1575, he led one of the doomed charges directly into Nobunaga's gunfire and was killed. He reportedly knew it was suicide but charged anyway because Katsuyori had given the order. And the fourth, the one that completes the set, is Kosaka Masanobu. His nickname was Nige Danjo, the fleeing Danjo, but don't let that fool you. He earned the name not for cowardice, but for his masterful tactical retreats that preserved Takeda forces when other commanders would have lost them. At the fourth Battle of Kawanakajima, he led the famous sneak attack on Uesugi Kenshin's mountain position and then fought his way back down to rescue Shingen's faltering main army from behind. He's also credited as the original author of the Koyo Gunkan, the Takeda military chronicle that records much of what we know about Shingen's campaigns and the battles we've been discussing in the game. Kosaka is a mandatory boss in the Mikatagahara Crucible, and with him, you've now fought the entire Takeda Four Heavenly Kings, Masakage, Baba, Naito, and Kosaka, all four as boss encounters. That's a level of historical completeness that most games don't even attempt. So that's the full Takeda war machine bearing down on Ieyasu the Tiger and all four of his Heavenly Kings. In late 1572, Shingen marched roughly 30,000 troops south from Kofu into Totomi province. His target wasn't actually Ieyasu, it was Oda Nobunaga. He was heading for Kyoto. Ieyasu's territory was just in the way. Yamagata Masakage led a secondary force of 5,000 into Mikawa, capturing Yoshida Castle and Fudamata Castle. Ieyasu had about 8,000 men at Hamamatsu Castle, plus 3,000 Oda reinforcements. The math was terrible, and this is where Ieyasu made the decision that almost cost him everything. Every advisor, his own generals, the Oda commanders, all of them told him to stay in the castle. Let Shingen pass, don't engage. Ieyasu refused. He marched out to the Mikatagahara plain and offered battle. Shingen deployed his forces in the Gyorin formation, the fish scale designed to draw an attacker in and crush them. Snow started falling around 4 in the afternoon. Ieyasu's arquebusiers opened fire, hoping their firepower would offset the numbers disadvantage. It didn't work. Naito Masatoyo's cavalry, the same general we just talked about, smashed through Honda Tadakatsu's position on the right flank, then wheeled around to destroy the Oda reinforcements. The Oda officers panicked and ran. Shingen rotated fresh cavalry into the fight. Ieyasu's army collapsed. He escaped back to Hamamatsu with 5 men. 5. And then Ieyasu did something brilliant. He ordered the castle gates left wide open. Huge fires lit. Sakai Tadatsugu beating a war drum in the gate tower, a total bluff projecting strength he didn't have. The Takeda scouts saw the open gates and suspected a trap. That night, Hattori Hanzo's ninja raiders attacked the Takeda camp, adding to the confusion. Shingen decided not to risk a winter siege and withdrew, and Ieyasu, the man who had just lost everything, his army, his dignity, very nearly his life, legend says he did something remarkable in the days after the battle. He commissioned a portrait of himself in his moment of defeat, hunched over, face twisted with fear and despair. It's called the Shikamizo, the Frowning Portrait, and it's one of the most famous images in Japanese history. Now, modern historians debate whether Ieyasu actually commissioned it. The painting may be from the Edo period, and some scholars have even questioned whether it depicts Ieyasu at all. But the story itself tells you everything you need to know about how Japan remembers this man. The legend says he carried that portrait with him on every subsequent campaign, a deliberate reminder of the day he nearly died because of his own arrogance. A reminder to listen to his advisors. A reminder to never be reckless again. And he never was. After Mikatagahara, Ieyasu became the most patient, most cautious leader in Japan. He outlived Shingen, outlived Nobunaga, outlived Hideyoshi, and in 1600, at Sekigahara, he won the battle that gave him the entire country. The man who escaped with 5 soldiers from Mikatagahara would become the founder of a dynasty that lasted 265 years. Nioh 3 puts his grandchild at the scene of that transformation. And whether or not the portrait is real, the lesson is sometimes the worst defeat of your life is the one that makes everything after it possible. Now, here's where the game's fiction intersects beautifully with historical mystery. In Nioh 3, when you defeat Shingen, he admits he relied on spirit stones because old age and illness had weakened him. In reality, Shingen died on May 13, 1573, just months after Mikatagahara. The exact cause of death is still debated. Some sources say he was shot by a sniper at the siege of Noda Castle. Others say pneumonia. The Koyo Gunkan, the Takeda military chronicle, describes his teeth falling out and his pulse becoming dangerously rapid. Whatever killed him, his death changed everything. Without Shingen, his son Katsuyori led the Takeda to destruction at Nagashino in 1575, where Oda Tokugawa forces used massed arquebus fire to annihilate the famous Takeda cavalry. The Tiger of Kai, the man who nearly ended Ieyasu's story, was stopped not by a battlefield defeat, but by his own mortality. So that's the war, the succession crisis, the Takeda war machine, the Battle of Mikatagahara, and the Tiger of Kai himself. But the story doesn't end here. In part 2, we're shifting from the battlefield to the people who shaped it. Honda Tadakatsu, the warrior who fought 57 battles and never bled. We mentioned him today as the man whose flank was broken by Naito Masatoyo, but his full story, including how he died, is one of the most extraordinary tales in Sengoku history. Then there's Hattori Hanzo, the most famous ninja in history, who probably wasn't a ninja at all, and two women who don't get enough attention. Inao Tora, the female daimyo, whose territory is literally where this entire chapter takes place, and Kasugano Tsubone, the wet nurse who saved the Tokugawa succession with nothing but political nerve. And we'll give Team Ninja their final report card, what they got right, what they invented, and the one small detail they missed that you'll never unsee once I point it out. Part 2 is coming soon. Subscribe so you don't miss it. And if you want the full timeline, historical references, and side-by-side comparisons between the game and real history, I've built a companion website at gammonsapiens.com/Nioh3. Links in the description. 450 years on, we're still telling Shingen's story. We're still telling Ieyasu's. The tigers and the foxes both leave a mark. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in part 2.